When we talk about how we're going to symbolize various things on a map, one thing we have to understand is the visual variables. So these visual variables are things that are used to communicate visually. And this could be on a map or in a graphic or in an infographic or anywhere else. And these are the types of things that when it changes, we notice it. So for example, some variables might include the size, shape, color, which includes hue, saturation, and lightness, orientation, spacing or arrangement, and the perspective height of something that appears in a graphic or in this case on a map. Let's start with the size. So the size is commonly varied on a map. This is a map of the southern UK around London, and we're seeing the size of those red circles varying based on population density. The shape of a symbol can change. If we look at the shape of Bend, Oregon on this map, we see that it's a dot, as are the other cities and towns on this map. But in the case of Salem, it's a star with a circle around it, which is a common symbol for a capital, such as Salem, which is our state capital. We can vary size and shape together. On this map, we see that this has to do with where the population of elephants are in Africa, and we can see that the size and the shape of the symbol, the shape always stays the same. It's shaped like an elephant, but the size is changing to indicate what the elephant population is. And that's a nice symbol to use because people immediately recognize it and understand what the map is all about just by seeing the symbol. When we talk about color, there's three different things that we can vary. One is the hue of a color, and that's how it varies around the color circle or across the spectrum or across the rainbow. So the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet type color variations that we see. And we can use this to break out different areas on a map so that each one of them is represented by a different color. For saturation on a map, we can look at the saturation is how rich the color is, from a pure blue to a very light blue, and this would be equivalent to the amount of pigment that's put in a white paint in order to make a color. The lightness of the color varies from white to black, and all through all the shades of gray here. And these shades of gray can be mixed with colors as well in order to give a darker or a lighter color to any symbol on a map. But if we talk about the colors, we can kind of talk about hue, saturation, and lightness or grayness. Here's one that varies both the size and the color of the symbols. The size of the symbols in this case represents the population for these various areas across the United States, and the color represents how much total hazard people living in that area are exposed to. So these hazards can come in different forms as shown on the three bottom inset maps, like tornadoes, hurricanes, and earthquakes, and it's just summarized above in the color of those circles, varying from low hazard in green to high hazard in red. We can also symbolize two different things on a map if we want to. In this case, we're doing it, the map maker is doing it with size and color. The various colors of the polygons on this map represent the places that have access to drinkable water. So the darker the blue is here, the more people in those areas have access to drinkable water. And the size of those orange circles is how much access they have, the number of households that have access to hygienic services. So two things related to each other: the hygiene of the area, whether their water is drinkable, and if they have access to hygienic services. But they're shown together by two different symbols. One's varying the size, the orange circles, and the other is varying the color that's filling in the polygons. Orientation is another thing that we can vary on a map. This is showing the orientation of the steepest downslope direction, and it's on a mountain range, so we can kind of see where the top of the mountain is at where the arrows are most divergent there. Spacing and arrangement, we can change the spacing and arrangement of various polygon symbols, especially polygon symbols, in order to show different categories that we might be trying to map. In this case, it's the nationality of the populations that lived in New York City back in 1890. And from the 1890 census. And we can see those various patterns. We really have to match it to the legend in order to get a strong idea of who was living where, but it does present all the data in a way that uses orientation to vary the symbology that's assigned to each part of New York City. And the perspective height would be kind of lifting the symbols off of the map. This map from the New York Times shows foreclosures. It's showing where the most foreclosures happen by the height of the perspective, the perspective height of each of these prisms. And the variation in color here is showing how many of the mortgages were subprime.